Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Sandy.
And this is the Italian American Stories Podcast. Welcome back to part 3 of Angelina Garramone.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one.
Like we talked about before, her story is pretty crazy. And we're diving into her second murder today. But we'll just do a real quick recap of the first 2 episodes. There was a good amount of people introduced, a lot of important events that were covered. Of course, we were introduced to Angelina. We discussed her early life with Luigi, their babies, their family. Angelina suing people who accused her of wanting to kidnap their men. Just kidding. We also went over Angelina's 2 scams, her piano scam and her real estate scam. We also discussed the life and death of Dorinda and how Angelina was the main suspect in Dorinda's murder. Finally, we left off with Angelina being sentenced to 8 years in prison for real estate fraud. All right, let's get into it and start discussing the second woman who went missing from Denver's Little Italy, Maria LaGuardia. So Maria was born in Potenza, Italy in 1845, and she came to America in 1890 with her husband, Michael LaGuardia, who she married in 1875 in Italy. Maria and Michael, they didn't have any children, but Maria was known to be very close with her nieces and nephews. And when she went missing, she was 65.
Oh, wow.
And strangely, her husband, Michael, he also went missing. Sort of. So 16 years before Maria went missing, so that would have been 1894, Michael fled from Denver. Apparently what happened was Michael was accused of having a relationship with a very young Italian girl. And when this relationship came to light, many members of the girl's family said they were going to come after him, so he fled Denver. And some of the Italians in Little Italy later told reporters that Michael changed his name to John Rossi and moved to Los Angeles, where he was living with a, quote, Mexican woman who was not his wife. Eventually, though, the rumor of Michael and the young girl was proven to be false, but he still didn't return to Denver. In fact, after he left Denver, he never contacted Maria again. And now Maria, she really seemed to miss her husband and was constantly trying to locate him. It was said she would consult Angelina, who, we talked about in the previous episodes. She was viewed by people in the Italian colony as being a fortune teller. Maria would go to Angelina regarding the location of her husband. And Maria, she also really trusted Angelina and would go to her for advice, not only trying to locate her husband, but Angelina was also her, quote, financial advisor, whatever that means. And actually, a few years before Maria went missing, she went to work for Angelina. And I'm not really sure what she did for Angelina, but if I had to guess, I would say Maria probably did work for Angelina, similar to what Dorinda did, take care of her kids, clean, cook, those kind of things. And Maria, she also owned many properties in the Denver area and was known to have large amounts of money on her most of the time. And to hide this money, or to just carry it around, I guess, Maria would actually sew the money into her clothes by making hidden pockets. Maria's story, it kind of breaks my heart. There is no evidence that she actually participated in Angelina's real estate fraud. She didn't seem to harm anyone, and really, she just seemed like a sweet lady who wanted to find her husband. She spent so many years looking for him, and in a way, it resulted in her murder, which we'll get into. In August of 1910, Angelina approached Maria and told her she knew where her husband was, and she would take her to him. So she told Maria that he was hiding in some mines near Golden, Colorado, which is a town west of Denver. And Angelina then went and bought 4 train tickets to go to Golden the next day. And the tickets were, of course, for her and Maria, but Angelina also brought her friend Concetta Forgione and Concetta's daughter, Stella. And Maria was spotted by a few witnesses boarding the train the next day with Angelina and the other 2 ladies. And sadly, this was the last time Maria was seen alive.
Oh, wow.
Maria's nephew, Dominic Tito, and a well-known Italian interpreter, Clyde Casadente, were the first to sound the alarm that Maria was missing. Dominic was getting worried when he couldn't find his aunt and reached out to Clyde. Because remember, we talked about how she didn't have children, but she was really close to her niece and nephew.
Right.
So Clyde agreed to help Dominic, and he actually ended up searching for Maria for almost a whole year. They would search hospitals and asylums for Maria and ask around Little Italy to see if anyone knew where she was. And when they couldn't find her, they went to the authorities, certain that, she'd been taken or murdered by someone, especially considering all the stuff going on in Little Italy. And they kept telling the authorities that they were certain Angelina was somehow involved. So Clyde, he was really concerned with all the missing Italians in the Denver area, and he actually took it upon himself to investigate many of the disappearances, including Maria's. Now, with Clyde, it's not really clear what his motives were. One article I read said that he was basically a concerned citizen, which is great. He should be concerned that his fellow Italians are missing. But there was also a theory floating around that he was determined to take Angelina down for all of her misdeeds in Little Italy. He was actually quoted in a Denver Post article saying that he had a lot of trouble getting his fellow Italian neighbors to speak to him. But once Angelina was arrested for forgery and sentenced to prison, people started opening up to him.
Oh, well, that says a lot there.
It does, yeah. Because she's gone.
She had a strong hold of that community.
She really did.
People were afraid of her.
Yeah, I mean, they called her Queen of Little Italy.
Well, yeah,
you know, true. I mean, she, like you said, she had a strong hold on them. The article also claimed that when Clyde would ask some of the Italians in Little Italy about Maria's whereabouts, they wouldn't say anything, but just kind of shrug their shoulders and make suggestive movements of the hand across the throat. So, wow. Yeah, obviously this is insinuating that they suspect Maria had been killed, but they didn't want to actually voice that.
Right.
Now, Clyde is a really interesting fellow. He was born in New York City in 1878, and his family moved to Colorado. Clyde eventually became a sheriff in Denver, and he actually had a pretty long career in law enforcement. He only had one eye, and rumors were that he lost his eye when he was either hit somehow or he was shot in the head and the bullet exited out of his eye. I couldn't find anything solid on this, but I feel like if you were shot in the head and the bullet exited out of your eye, it would be a pretty devastating injury. But right. I mean, you know, I don't know. He married Anna Reynolds on June 14th, 1900. And strangely, Anna had tried having Clyde arrested 2 months before their marriage for following her around too much and threatening to kill her for winking at another man.
Wow.
Yeah, that's before the marriage. But apparently they worked it out somehow because, like I said, they were married 2 months later. Now, a few years into their marriage, so in 1905, he was accused of having inappropriate relations with a 14-year-old.
Jeez.
But he was ultimately acquitted of all of these charges. I couldn't really find any specific details on this case, so I'm not really sure where it went. But that same year, Clyde and Anna sadly lost their infant daughter. And I can't help but feel bad for Anne. I mean, her husband is accused of having inappropriate relations with a young girl, and then she loses her baby. Like, that's a lot to deal with. Now, in 1907, Clyde ran into similar trouble when he was charged with contributing to the delinquency of a 13-year-old girl, Lottie Road. So it's kind of a theme for him here. And from what I gather, Clyde somehow, somewhere encountered Lottie and convinced her parents to sell her to him so he could marry her. Like I said, she was 13. So one headline I read in the Denver Post said, "Courts trying to save Lottie Road, claims that child was sold for white slave." And luckily the courts denied the marriage and Clyde and the girl's parents were arrested. Clyde was convicted and sentenced to prison for 6 years on assault charges. And I'm not sure what happened to the girl's parents, but hopefully they face some sort of punishment because that's pretty ridiculous.
Right.
So then in 1914, he married Gertrude Reynolds. And if the last name Reynolds sounds familiar, that's because it was also the last name of his first wife, Anna. Anna and Gertrude were sisters.
Okay.
The drama layers here. This is like a drama layer cake. It's insane. So Gertrude and Clyde went on to have 5 children. And in 1923, the state became involved, claiming that the children were neglected and malnourished. And the judge in the case recommended that Gertrude get an operation so that she could no longer have kids. It's like, well, okay, but what about him?
Right.
Like, you know, it doesn't have to be her, but he insisted that she would need to consent to the operation. But from what I read, it really felt more like he was ordering her to do it. And I couldn't verify, you know, if she actually got the operation or not. Like we said, I just thought it was interesting that the judge didn't order Clyde, or at least both of them, to receive whatever operation. It's weird. But let's go ahead and we'll get back to the disappearance of Maria. I just wanted to give a little background because Clyde plays quite the role in the rest of the story. So back to the disappearance of Maria. On August 4th, 1911, body parts suspected to be that of Maria LaGuardia's were discovered in a gulch near Golden. A few days after Maria's remains were found, Clyde asked Maria's niece and nephew if they could identify their aunt's clothing, and Clyde thought this could be done easily because Maria made her own clothing. So Maria's niece and nephew brought the cloth that Maria would make her clothes out of, and it was officially confirmed that the cloth and clothing matched. So on August 6, 1911, the remains found near Golden were positively identified as Maria LaGuardia's.
That's sad.
I know. Maria's nephew and niece were so upset and ready to see justice for their aunt that they told authorities they were willing to sell their property in order to prosecute those responsible. So Clyde and Maria's nephew, Dominic, were actually the ones to determine when Maria was last seen. Denver has an annual feast day called St. Rocco's, and the festival still happens in Denver to this day. It started in 1893. But in 1910, the feast was held on Sunday, August 21st, 1910. And Clyde and many other witnesses said the last time they saw Maria was the Friday before the feast, and Maria never showed up to the feast the next day. So interestingly, Dorinda's husband Clemente, remember that whole group of people,
Right.
was the first to implicate the three women, Angelina, Conchetta, and Stella, in the disappearance of Maria. He told authorities that he saw the four women board a rail car on August 19th, 1910. And he also told the police that the next day, August 20th, Angelina told him she was with Maria the previous night, taking her to see her long-lost husband. But he said he didn't come forward because he feared Angelina, like everybody else did. But now that she was in prison for the forgery charges, he felt safe to tell his story. So just a quick reminder, Maria went missing in August of 1910, and her remains were found a year later in August of 1911. It just gets a little confusing keeping track when the two women were murdered and
Right.
the same month but different
Same
years.
month, yeah.
It's a little odd. Another reason that Clemente believed that Angelina murdered Maria was because one day when people were asking where Maria was, he saw Angelina bite her own little finger while looking at Dorinda. Dorinda was still alive at this time. It was 1910. And Clemente claimed that this meant, "I will kill you" in Italian. So basically she's telling Dorinda, don't say anything.
Wow. So they had their code for kill.
Exactly. Little finger. On August 6, 1911, the police decided that they needed to question Angelina. And from her prison cell, Angelina admits that she put an alive Maria on a rail car to Golden. Because remember, Angelina is in prison for the forgery charges. And she said she promised Maria that she would find her missing husband at the end of the line. But Angelina denied that she got on the rail car with Maria. So now between Clemente's testimony and other witnesses seeing Maria with Angelina, the authorities officially charged Angelina with the murder of Maria LaGuardia on Wednesday, August 9th, 1911. Not only was Angelina arrested that day, but numerous other people were arrested as well. Her husband, Luigi Garramone, their son, Finabello, and Conchetta Forgione, a business associate of Angelina's. She was arrested as being an accessory to the murder because she was on the rail car with Angelina and Maria. And Stella Forgione was also arrested, and that's Conchetta's daughter. She was also arrested for being an accessory to murder because, again, she got on the rail car with them. So I guess the police arrested Luigi and Finabello because a lot of Italians told the authorities that those two were always involved in Angelina's schemes. However, those two were released pretty quick. So after Angelina was charged, a reporter from the Denver Rocky Mountain News wrote that the prosecutors will meet their match with Angelina, whose wits are known to be the shrewdest in the Italian colony. She was a smart cookie.
Mm-hmm.
So apparently when Angelina was charged with murder, she shrieked, "Oh God, I didn't do it. Maria is still alive." Angelina claimed that she's a Catholic and Maria is her godmother and she would never hurt her, which is interesting because in a later interview, Angelina denied that Maria was her godmother. So who knows? She was quoted saying in that later article, "Miss Maria LaGuardia was not my godmother. She was not in my class, even if I am a convict. She came from a lower part of Italy. I have known her for about 17 years, but I never went to her home." And if you remember, they both came from Potenza, Italy.
Yeah, I was going to say a lower part.
Yeah. It's like just because you came to America and you made a bunch of money through fraud does not
Right.
make you better. So let's go ahead and get into the actual murder of Maria LaGuardia. Like I said earlier, she was found near Golden in August of 1911, and the body was found by a J.N. Johnson on his ranch. And Maria's body was wrapped in burlap. In fact, the burlap matched the same burlap found wrapped around Dorinda's body.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's...
Yeah, that says a lot.
And what's really crazy is that the burlap was the same burlap that was used at a local cemetery. And Clemente actually worked at that cemetery.
Oh.
It's weird, right?
Forgot about that.
Me too. And because of this, he actually became a suspect for a brief amount of time. Many authorities said the murder of Dorinda and Maria were connected and had many similarities, which I agree. You know, ultimately, though, Clemente was not held for the murder. And like we talked about, Angelina was not alone when she took Maria to find her husband. There were two other women with her, Conchetta Forgione and her daughter, Stella. Conchetta, she was arrested, and she actually agreed to provide a full confession, which this is really damning for Angelina here.
Right, but somebody's got to stop this woman.
Exactly. Yeah. So on August 11th, 1911, Conchetta laid out all of the details of Maria's murder. She told Sheriff Joseph Dennis Jr. that the murder happened on the morning of August 20th, 1910, between 7 and 7:30. She said it all started, though, on August 19th when her daughter Stella, Angelina, Maria, and Angelina's 6-month-old baby Tony stopped and got ice cream and lemonade in Denver before they got on a rail car to go to Golden. Conchetta said once they got to Golden, it was late in the evening, so they decided to sleep out in the open air by the rail station. She claimed that Angelina told Maria that she knew where her husband was and would take her to him in the morning. Can you imagine sleeping out in the air with a baby? And that'd be scary.
Bizarre.
So the next morning on August 20th, the women arrived where Angelina said Maria's husband would be waiting, and ultimately the spot where Maria would lose her life. So Conchetta said Maria started walking quickly around the area looking for her husband, and Angelina started freaking out because Maria was getting too far away from her. So Angelina called to Maria, telling her to come back, and they would leave to go get a cup of coffee at a friend's house. After that, they would come back and search some more for her husband. But when Maria didn't come back, Angelina asked Conchetta for the bread knife she was carrying, which actually turned out to be a butcher's knife. And Angelina was holding baby Tony, and when Conchetta handed her the knife, Angelina handed Conchetta her baby. And Conchetta said she had the knife on her so that they could cut the bread they brought with them. You know, they're like camping and all sorts of things, so why not? So once Angelina had the knife, she actually ran after Maria. And I can picture this in my head. It's kind of creepy. And when she caught up to her, she grabbed Maria by the forehead and said, "Oh, godmother, see the worm in your throat?" Angelina then pulled Maria's head back and cut her throat with a knife.
Oh, wow.
Pretty vivid. So a couple of things here. First, according to Conchetta, she said godmother, which I think is one more piece of evidence that shows that she was her godmother. And second, like we just talked about, it's so brutal. I mean, this poor woman is just looking for her husband, thinking her goddaughter is trying to help her. And then this happens. It's just so sad. But after Angelina killed Maria, Conchetta said she yelled at Angelina a couple of times, "What have you done? What have you done?" And after Maria fell to the ground, Angelina spent time looking for $700 that Maria supposedly sewed into her clothing. But she never found that amount. Instead, she only found $320, and it was all in $10 bills. So Angelina then ran back to the other two women, waving the knife, which was dripping with blood. And she told Conchetta and Stella that she would kill them both if they ever told anyone. Conchetta then stated Angelina wiped the bloody knife on her cloak. And Conchetta said that Angelina forced her to take $160 and told her if she ever told anyone, she would get a lawyer and blame it all on her. So basically, she's like, we killed this woman, we took her money, you're taking some of this money, which makes you an accomplice.
Yep.
You know, I mean, she was there
Setting
still.
her up.
Yeah, exactly. And Conchetta told her that she didn't want the money, but Angelina told her that if she doesn't take the money, it is a sign that she will betray her. And Angelina, ultimately made her take the money. But a few days later, for some reason, Angelina took the money back from Conchetta. This really angered Stella when Angelina took the money back. And I think that this is kind of where maybe their relationship sort of started falling apart. So Conchetta said that Angelina demanded that she help her push Maria's body into the gulch. And then Angelina took the knife and dug out the earth and then kicked the dirt she dug up onto Maria's body. Just a side note, it is pouring here in little old Grand Junction, Colorado. So if you hear that, just know that we're enjoying a nice little rainstorm right now while we tell Angelina's story. So then Conchetta apparently claimed that Angelina's fingers and hands were covered in blood. And this part, oh boy. She said Angelina then sucked the blood off her fingers.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Now, this story seems a little off to me, to say the least. And I say this because Angelina had already wiped the knife off on her cloak. She pushed the body of Maria into a gulch, dug up dirt, handed Conchetta $160. And I can't imagine she did all of this with blood dripping from her hands. But I suppose Conchetta, she could have had the order of events mixed up. This particular event was all over the newspapers, not only in Denver, but across the country. And Angelina's bloody hands tended to be the headline in a lot of newspapers across the country. They really ran with it. Which is shocking,
Yeah.
In one article I read, it explained that the reason Angelina sucked the blood off of her fingers was because of a superstition that comes from the Basilicata region of Italy, which that's where Potenza is, and Angelina is from. So apparently if a murderer tastes the blood of his or her victim, then the curse is removed. And my question is like, what curse? The curse of murdering someone? Does it get rid of the guilt? Does this mean you won't be caught? From what I found, it apparently means that the murderer is absolved from the guilt of God. So, I mean, if that's all it takes, that could be a little scary, but kind of cool to tie it back. Not that it's cool. Cool is the wrong word.
Right.
Just interesting to tie it back to a superstition in Basilicata.
Yeah.
So when the three women were getting ready to leave the crime scene, Angelina removed the bloody cloak she was wearing and told Stella to hide it. And Stella hid the cloak under the rail station's platforms. And later on, when the officials tried to locate the cloak, they weren't able to find it. However, they found a lot of holy cards scattered around the platform. And Stella, she told the authorities that the cards were Maria's, and the cards were found by Angelina when she was looking for the money in Maria's clothes, and Stella got rid of those as well as the cloak. Towards the end of her confession, Conchetta told the sheriff she didn't actually know that Angelina was going to kill Maria, and she and Stella only came along with her because Angelina wanted them to take care of Angelina's baby, Tony. So, I don't know. This was something I was wondering as I was reading Conchetta's confession. I kept thinking, like, well, why would you go with her? And why would you take your daughter up there if you knew that this was going to happen?
Yeah, I don't know why she took all them.
Yeah. And you also have a knife stuffed into your coat. I mean, I guess they did have bread, but I don't know. It just makes me wonder if Conchetta was more involved than she claimed. And we'll actually get into Conchetta's background into a bit, which may help explain who Conchetta is. It's very interesting. But after they buried the body, the three women left the murder scene and headed back to Denver. Stella went on her own way, and Conchetta stated that she and Angelina went to the West Side Court so Angelina could appear for her court hearings regarding her fraud charges.
Out of a murder, back to court for something else.
I know. At this point, you would think, Angelina, aren't you wondering, like, what has happened to my life here? I just murdered my godmother on top of a mountain. Then I have to come down the mountain for a court hearing because I stole people's homes from them. It's just a little self-reflection there. So Conchetta, in her confession, claimed that a few days after the murder, Angelina started becoming really paranoid that the body was not hidden well enough. So Angelina tried to convince Conchetta and Stella to return to the scene of the crime so they could burn Maria's body. Now, Conchetta and Angelina did go back 3 days later so they could throw more dirt over the body, but Conchetta said that she refused to burn the body. So this same trip, Angelina apparently brought a man's lawn-tailed coat to leave with the body. And the sheriff believes that Angelina placed the coat there to throw off any investigation that would be done. You know, Angelina probably thought they would look for a man if the officers saw this coat. And this is also when Angelina brought the burlap to wrap the body in. And then Conchetta said Angelina decided to go back on her own, and she took a meat cleaver that she borrowed from a local butcher, which I'm like, did she not have a meat cleaver? I mean, I wonder how that conversation went. Like, can you imagine the butcher, what he thought later on when he realized, like, oh my God, I loaned her that butcher knife, like, or meat cleaver or whatever. And the sheriff, he believed that if he could find the butcher she borrowed the cleaver from, it would be a pretty good piece of evidence. But when Angelina got back to the crime scene, she apparently chopped Maria's body into smaller sections so that she could ensure the body was truly buried. Little did she know, though, that in the future, the gulch she buried Maria's body in would flood from rains, probably like the rains today. And Maria's remains would actually wash to the surface. And the sheriff and deputy district attorney believed the confession was truthful. And Stella also confirmed that her mother's confession was true. So because of all this, the authorities were ready to move forward with the case, but they needed a little more testimony from Conchetta and Stella. So they took Conchetta and Stella to the scene of the crime, where the two women, they actually showed the authorities step by step how the murder was committed. And this is wacky. Conchetta and Stella, they literally acted out the murder of Maria. So Conchetta was Maria and Stella was Angelina. And Stella took a stick and pretended to cut the throat of Maria, but this was her mother's throat. And I have to admit, the description of this moment, it gives me the shivers. The fact that they so freely acted this out and Stella pretended to cut her mother's / Maria's throat, it's just a little chilling, right?
Yeah, that's just, I don't know.
It's very odd.
Why do you have to show that?
Yeah, you're right. Like, why can't they just say this is where she slit her throat?
She slit her throat.
Yeah, like why act it out? So once they returned to the police station, Conchetta pleaded with the sheriff to keep Angelina in jail. You know, she obviously feared Angelina would kill her and her daughter for what they just acted out, basically. And the sheriff told the women that Angelina was locked away and could not get to them. But Conchetta cried and said, it doesn't matter. She'll send someone to kill us. Wow. That's the fear that woman had on so many people. Mm-hmm. And I believe with that, we will stop with episode 3 and pick this back up next week with our last episode of Angelina. Yeah, so when we do pick it up next week, we'll dive into Conchetta's background. It's like Angelina's got some stuff going on, but Conchetta, oh boy, she is
Stay tuned.
quite the character. Yep. And if you've been enjoying these episodes, please subscribe, follow, rate our podcast. We're on all the podcast platforms. We're on social media if you just search for Italian American Stories. And thank you for listening. And we hope you enjoyed the 3rd episode of Angelina Garramone. And we hope you come back to listen to more stories of Italian Americans. See you next time.
See you next time.